Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Oklahoma City have gotten a deal done. Once again, they have traded a win now player in exchange for future draft picks, and in this case, they traded Steven Adams to the New Orleans Pelicans in exchange for a future first round pick and two future second round picks. However, before I get too far into this, I want to remind you to leave a like and subscribe. Remember, it helps you out because you get all of this great basketball content right there in your sub box, and it helps me out because I love the sport. However, without further ado, let's talk about the Pelicans and the Thunder making this trade. The Thunder also brought in George Hill and Darius Miller as two guys that are on expiring contracts that made the money work in this particular trade. I think that they did a pretty good job getting a first round pick in exchange for Steven Adams. Adams is a large expiring contract who plays a center position that really isn't all that valuable in the NBA. So I think that they exacted some pretty good value out of Steven Adams, and I think that this is a very good compensation for them. Getting that first round pick from Denver, even if it is lottery protected, is still valuable. They also got two second round picks that actually could be pretty good, as they come from Charlotte and Washington, who are two of the, I'd say, bottom 10 or 12 teams in the NBA, and also don't look to have particularly bright futures, although they could. But they did get three first-round picks that have differing levels of value, and I think that that's about as good of compensation as you possibly could have gotten in exchange for an expiring contract in Steven Adams. They also got George Hill, who I still think is worth a valuable second-round pick, if not a really late first-round pick. He's a really good player, good backup point guard, good guy to have on your roster as a great leader. And overall, I think that this is a pretty solid move for the Thunder. They got, like I said, good draft compensation and a good player as well who they can turn into more draft picks. So I would give them an A for this trade. With the Pelicans, this is the team I'm going to talk about a bit more because obviously it has far more implications on their actual roster. They bring in Steven Adams to be their starting center for next season, and it's a significant upgrade over Jackson Hayes. I think that Hayes has a long way to go in developing into a starting center in the NBA. It's going to take a couple more years at least with him, although I do believe that he will end up getting there. But Steven Adams is a good guy to bring on as a mentor. Similar to George Hill, he's a good veteran to have on your roster. He's a good guy, and he's going to definitely elevate this team from the center position. He did have a kind of rough series against the Rockets last year in the playoffs, and we saw him get played off the court a little bit as Darius Bazley was clearly the better big man option for the Thunder in that series. But the Rockets aren't the same team that they once were, and if the Pelicans were to run into them in the playoffs, they now have Christian Wood as a big man. They're not as one-dimensional where they're relying on playing five perimeter players at a time. So that will make Steven Adams a much more valuable player against them. And I think that that's really the one series where he could have gotten played out of it in the way he did. Against any other team, he would have been a valuable guy to have. And in a Western Conference that has Nikola Jokic and Anthony Davis, I think that this is a pretty solid trade for the Pelicans. They now have a starting lineup of, by my estimation, Eric Bledsoe, Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, assuming they bring him back, which I think is almost a guarantee, Zion Williamson, and Steven Adams. That's a really good starting lineup there. Very good defensively, as Bledsoe and Ball are two very good defensive guards. They're going to very much limit what opposing guards can do, and Adams is a good defensive center, a good rim protector, probably best in a drop coverage scheme, but that's what a lot of teams seem to be utilizing lately, so it should fit. The question on the defensive end comes down to Zion and Brandon Ingram. Ingram has potential on defense due to his length and athleticism. There's a chance that he could become a plus defender, and obviously, with how exciting Zion is, he can jump out of the gym, he's super athletic. If he can continue to improve his defensive decision-making, and conditioning, then he also has a chance to be a plus defender. So at their very best, this team has a lethal defensive first unit. On the offensive end, there's a bit more questions. Bledsoe obviously doesn't have a great jump shot. Ball is getting better at shooting, but he's still not exactly above average. Brandon Ingram is a great scorer. Zion Williamson is a great finisher, but once again, not a great shooter. Steven Adams really can't shoot. So at this point, the floor spacing on this team looks a little iffy. Obviously, you have some guys that are certainly competent three-point shooters coming off your bench, like Kira Lewis, J.J. Redick, Nicolo Melli. They've got options to space the floor out, but in that particular starting group that I believe that they'll be running out, there's not a lot of options for spacing the floor. And that's not exactly what you want when you have Zion Williamson. However, on defense, I think that they more than make up for that, and that's going to make this a plus starting lineup. Eric Bledsoe is a downgrade from Drew Holiday, and Steven Adams isn't that much better than Derek Favors to cancel out from that massive downgrade. So I don't think that this team will be as good as they were last year, but I still do think that they have a chance to be a competitive team in the Western Conference. In my opinion, though, they'll end up between the 11th and 13th best team. Off the bench, they have some really interesting options as well alongside that starting lineup. Kira Lewis will probably be the backup point guard now. Getting rid of George Hill frees up that point guard position a little bit. Oh, and a lot of this is assuming that they're going to play Lonzo Ball at the 2 for a large portion of his minutes after moving on from Holiday. They don't have a super clear option to start at the 2 guard because it appears that they like bringing J.J. Redick off the bench as a bench gunner. So I think that Lonzo likely moves over to the shooting guard position and plays like more of a combo guard. We saw him play alongside Holiday last year and have his best season of his career. So I think that that's a good role for him. And obviously Bledsoe and Lewis are both very good point guards. So yeah, I think that was a pretty safe assumption to make, that the Pelicans prefer playing Lonzo at the 2. But that shooting depth off the bench is important. We'll see if a Josh Hart extension gets done. I'm not really sure that it will. That would be probably the other big move that the Pelicans will make this season, either extending Josh Hart or extending Lonzo Ball. I think a Lonzo extension is one of the more interesting things to discuss. I could see him getting like a 4-year, $80 million extension. Joe Harris pretty much just got something similar to that. Davis Bertans got something similar to that. And I consider Lonzo Ball to be in a pretty similar tier to those type of guys. He's a very good defensive guard, and he's a good passer as well, especially in the transition. If his jump shot continues to improve and he can develop his game off of the dribble a bit, then there's a chance that he ends up being a top 40 or 50 player in the NBA still. And that type of player is worth $20 million annually. So if I were the Pelicans, I would be looking to extend him. If his agent is demanding some kind of superfluous extension that you don't think he's worth, I do think that a swap of players that are extension eligible between Lonzo Ball and John Collins could be a playable move for both teams. The Hawks just signed Danilo Gallinari, and he appears to be someone that they want to be slotting in at the 4 position long term, as they gave him a 3-year deal. That does bring up some questions about John Collins' future in Atlanta, along with the recent draft acquisition of Onyeka Okongwu. It's likely that we won't see Collins play the 5 much, so it's going to be hard for enough minutes to go around in that Hawks front court. So I could see them looking to bring in a guy like Lonzo Ball, who could be a terrific complement to Trae Young in the backcourt as a competent 3-point shooter who can really D up. I think that could be a nice move for both teams, as Collins would be kind of the ideal big guy to play alongside Zion Williamson as a floor spacing big man who can knock down some 3-pointers. He's also getting better on the defensive end, as he's approaching league average at this point. And that was something that was very questionable in the first couple of years of his career. So if he can continue improving on defense, he could be a perfect fit for alongside Zion. I get that they did just trade for Steven Adams to play the center position, but Steven Adams is not a good enough player that you would want to pass on a potential franchise-changing guy in John Collins, and he could form a very interesting young core along with Kira Lewis, Brandon Ingram, and Zion Williamson if this trade were to get done. I also think that bringing on Lewis indicates that they don't view Ball as a point guard. They don't view him as a lead guard type. They want Lewis to take over that role. And if he's not going to be your lead guard, I'm not sure that you want to extend Ball to that type of extension, especially on a team emphasized around Zion Williamson. I think that putting him on a team where he would complement Trae Young perfectly might be a better move for the Hawks, having him on that kind of extension than it would be for the Pelicans. So that's definitely a trade idea I have interest in. I talked about it a little last night, and I just wanted to revisit it here. But overall, I think that the Pelicans did an okay job in this trade. I would have liked to hang on to that first round pick and maybe give up a third, second instead. Adams is an expiring contract, and there's a chance that he leaves you following this current season, and that would not be an optimal outcome for the Pelicans because it would mean you gave up a semi-valuable first-round pick in exchange for a guy who you only had for a single year. But I also think that he's an upgrade from Jackson Hayes. He can help mentor Hayes and help him to improve at the center position. On the defensive end of the floor, he's also going to provide valuable rim protection alongside Zion Williamson. It would have been nice if the Pelicans could have added a five-man who could have spaced the floor a bit better than Steven Adams, but this is a solid move, and overall I give the Pelicans I think I'll give them a B minus because they had to give up that first round pick. But in the end, this is going to help them be better next year. If they wouldn't have made this deal, I would say that there was a chance they finished dead last in the Western Conference. So this will at least get them more in the mix to be around a team like Minnesota or Sacramento or Memphis. And yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to talk about. Overall, I think the Thunder won this trade by getting the first round pick. But I also think the Pelicans did okay, considering that Steven Adams is a decent player. Yeah, I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Leave a comment in the comment section down below talking about what you think about this trade. That's it for me, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you all again very soon.